Okay, if you're listening to this episode, you've seen the runtime. In all honesty, both me and Mark agree that you can skip this episode. We tried our best. Hopefully, we were funny, but this is genuinely the worst episode of Star Trek or TV that either of us has ever watched. So, continue at your own risk. Captain Slog, Stardate 15. Welcome to the continued adventures of Eddie Edwards and Mark O'Neill as we trek through all of Star Trek from here in 10 forward. So before we start off, just at the top of the podcast, I've got to shout out Douglas Trumbull, who did the visual effects on Star Trek The Motion Picture, has passed away. He was a fucking legend. If you Google him, the first picture that comes up is him leaning on the model of the Tyrell Corporation from Blade Runner, which is one of the most visually stunning movies ever made. So, cheers for all the good work, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. So one time, one of my lesser moments, was when I lived in a shit house in London, as we all did. I entertained myself one evening by buying the biggest pizza I could get from the takeaway under my house that was clearly a front for drugs, because the opening times were whenever we feel like it. And when it, like closer to tax season, they opened up a lot more. So I got myself a giant pizza, and I got 2 bottles of wine, and I watched the 4-hour documentary called Danger Days on the second disc of the Blade Runner Blu-ray. And about halfway through, I just started crying. Not at my own life. Weirdly, I was literally weeping because they were discussing how they made Blade Runner and Douglas Trumbull and making the fantastic miniatures and how matte paintings and how Adam Savage done a video the other day with the Corridor crew, and I might be misquoting him here, but I believe that there isn't I think, I'm only because you've sprung this on me, I'm kind of vaguely half remembering. I think there isn't a single digital effect in all of Blade Runner.
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
It's all done in camera.
Yeah.
And
I think there might have been some touch up, to remove, like when you've got the car. I think there's some but even I don't know if it's digital. I think they will go in and painted them out frame by frame.
Yeah, matte paintings and stuff. I literally started crying because I was halfway through my giant drug pizza, and I was like, they'll never do this again. This is a type of artistic expression that just will never occur. On saying that, I'm not the fuck CGI guy, because I do think CGI is art.
Yeah,
I just think it's a different type of art that has different discipline. But that's I got this as well when I watched the documentary for the making of Titanic, because James Cameron was like, we have to film on the Titanic. Where is it? In the ocean? Oh, okay. Just build a new one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Douglas Trumbull, thanks for the refit, the Enterprise A, right?
Yeah. And I mean, if he'd done nothing else, just having done Blade Runner, which is Blade Runner is the most beautiful movie I think that has ever been made, and the fact that for a nerd like me, it's a movie about what is the difference between a robot and a man, and where does that line come in, and what is alive. The fact that it's in service, something that beautiful done in service of that kind of concept is it's mind blowing. And I love Blade Runner 2049, but it's a different beast. And you're right, we'll never doing that sort of shit. It's just something that's not, unless somebody in the future, occasionally some somebody goes, I'm going to make a black and white movie using old cameras. I think George Clooney's done it, and you have to put them on a block of ice so they don't overheat and shit. Somebody at some point in the future is going to go, yeah, let's do it all with visual effects. And then after they've done it, they'll be interviewed about it and go, I'm never doing it again.
I went to the Ray Harryhausen exhibition at the Gallery of Modern Art. Now, to be fair, I went there as a movie fan. I will actually hold my hands up and say I have never seen a single Ray Harryhausen movie. I have only seen the movies that he has influenced. So I knew of him, but I've only seen like Army of Darkness and whatnot. Sorry, there hasn't been any fucking jokes in this comedy podcast yet. But he was the same, and it wasn't until I think, if I vaguely recall, only the last movie that he ever made, which may have been Clash of the Titans, did he have any assistance. Everything else he just done it on his own.
yeah, fucking absolutely. I love that stuff. Yeah, it's so mental. It's like how do you? It's like, but even on Lord of the Rings, there's like, if you watch the making of that, it's like, well, how did they make Orthanc and like get the big swooping in shot? Well, they made a model of Orthanc and then they swooped it in, and then they had Saruman on a green screen and like walking down a set of stairs that matched up exactly, and you're like, that can't be how you did that. That's mental.
Yeah, totally. Good job. Good job, Doug. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Trumbull.
Other than that, how you doing?
Well, I had a scare this week, Mark, where I was sent a video by the doctor for the making of the facial immobilization shell that I will need to be fitted with. And all I can think while watching this is one, I'm totally going to pretend that I'm having a schizoid embolism from Total Recall while I'm in this chair. And two, so apparently they suggest that you should shave before getting this fitted. Now, for those who have only listened to this and don't know what I look like, a significant amount of my personal self-identity is tied up in my beard. But I found out since that I can get my beard braided instead.
Right.
So I've got a friend coming over the day before to braid my beard.
Like
so that it will
Thor.
sit, yeah,
nice.
So it will sit flush
against
my face. And then I have to keep that for the 2-week period up until I have the actual scan, because the shell still fits. And I will point out, this is a period, Mark, in which I am gigging. And I'm personally looking forward to not telling the MCs that I know why I've braided my beard, having them rip into me, and then getting on stage and being like, well, it's because of a brain tumour, actually, mate. So I hope you feel good about yourself.
And then you should say, not for surgery, it's just the brain tumour told me to do this. And then also, when you go in for the what is it, the facial immobilization shield?
It's called an immobilization. It's the facial immobilization shell. It was first thing I read about it was just called an immobilization shell, which I was like, well, I believe that's a level 7 wizard spell.
When you go in and the doctor explains it all to you over the course of it, like, it'll probably take a solid 5 minutes to explain everything to you in great detail. When he then asks, do you have any questions about the facial immobilization shell? Your one and only question should be, how much should I be able to move around inside of it?
My only real question is, can I keep it? Because I feel like it'd be if anybody hasn't guessed by yet, I'm very much planning a half-hour Edinburgh show around this entire affair. And I do want to be able to bust out the immobilization shell on stage.
Stabbed in the head with a gamma knife. That's what it's called.
Yeah. I was going to call it a tumour in my fucking head.
The tumour in my head wrote this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how you been?
I'm good. I went to therapy today, my first ever therapy session. And obviously, you know, if you're feeling sad or whatever, make sure to tell someone. We are a pro-libraries, pro-therapy, pro-IRA podcast. That, and also I met someone the other day at work who was like, she said, I really enjoyed that thing that I could listen to you talk for 4 hours. And I said, well, I have a Star Trek podcast. So she signed up, but then I started thinking, is there anything because I've introduced people to this, I guess, but they already know me. I was like, is there anything in there that could really come out badly? And then I thought, well, all the pro IRA stuff like comes from an earlier podcast. And if you're listening to this and you don't really get, why we say that, don't worry, I'll explain it. So basically, the British government done an illegal occupation of the 6 counties, and sometimes the only way to solve your problems is through violence. So hopefully that's explained it enough that you when you go to the paper, they'll be like, oh, clearly this is what he meant, though.
Yeah, is the question you got to ask yourself about the IRA is Ireland a broadly speaking independent country? And if the answer to that question is yes, then job done. So
Star Trek, of course, also a pro IRA television show. So
as shown by the fact that it's got Cole Meany in it.
Speaking of Star Trek, this is the worst episode so far. You remember last week when I said if I had been watching this live in 1987 and I saw Angel 1 and thought that new Star Trek doesn't work, and then 10010 brought me back, this would have been the episode that made me go, it really doesn't work. This would be the worst episode of the original series.
This is... So, okay, the plot of this episode is that there's a guy on a planet who has... there's a hostage situation. He's calling for a negotiator. It's a negotiator he knows from a previous incident 40 years ago. And this old guy's coming, this admiral, and he's taken some anti-aging drugs to cure his Iverson's disease. And he's getting younger and younger, but also it's not stable and he's going to die. That's the plot of the episode.
He's Benjamin Buttoned himself.
He's Benjamin Buttoned himself, yeah. Aye. He has indeed. And as you can imagine... listener, if you've not seen this episode, a conceit like this very much hinges on the performance of the central character. And Clayton Rona, the actor who plays Admiral Mark Jameson, you should be fucking ashamed of yourself. You to look Patrick Stewart in the eye and do that on set. I've got written down in my notes, apparently Iverson's disease is a disease that affects the part of the brain that's responsible for overacting.
I was wondering, is this a crossover with Johnny Knoxville doing Bad Grandpa? Johnny Knoxville's performance as Bad Grandpa is Oscar worthy compared to this nonsense. So
if I'd like to say as well, he's in the worst old man rubber suit ever. And how offensive is it to be cast as his wife? Where he's told, this is what we need to do to a normal person to make them look like you withered hag.
So one of the behind the scenes stories on this is that the director of the episode, Rob Bowman, said, what was your man's name, the actor?
It's Clayton Rona. I've checked his IMDb. He's done nothing. He's done like one episode of things here and there, and good.
Clayton Rona. So Rob Bowman said that in his entire career on Star Trek, he has never spent as much time off set discussing how to play a character than he has with Clayton Boner playing Admiral Stroke. That's what he's called, right?
Yeah.
So he's this is like the shit. Like there's lots of things in my life, right, that I wish more people would be into, and because I know a lot of fuck them, they're not going to listen. I know a lot of fucking boring people, right? I know a lot of boring people who spend their time. They come home from work. There's their wife that they fucking hate, right? There's their children that they can't stand, and they go to their fucking their job, whatever, and they come home, and then the wife says, "Oh, hi, honey, how you doing?" And he's like, I just where's my fucking dinner? And then she says, "Well, I haven't made it yet." So he hits her, right? So basically, I know a lot of couples from the 1950s. The point is, I know a lot of people who are fucking. I don't understand what they talk about, right? I don't, because they have no interest in like pop culture or anything.
To give you an example of that, Mark, when we bought this house, when we came around to look around it, there was no DVD. There were no books. There was no DVD collection. They didn't have a PlayStation.
Yeah.
All of their posters were like oh, look at like they had like 1950s style travel posters of places that they clearly hadn't fucking been.
The poster next to the bathroom is just an arrow that says bathroom.
Yeah. Well, what is there inside of you? But I know exactly the sort of people you mean. They're the worst.
These people, right? And over the years, because I have to be around them, because I'm related to several of them, and I have to be like, oh, what have you read recently, or have you seen any good films, or have you watched anything on television that isn't the fucking Bachelor or whatever, right? Like, is there anything going on that you have consumed, any media that you have consumed that is in any way interesting or thought-provoking, more than just, I wonder how Michelle's getting on today. Yeah, she's probably fine. Anyway, so over the years I've tried to say, like, get into comics. Like, there's a comic book for everyone, and it's a new way of consuming media and cultivating ideas, and maybe it might help you sort of look at the world in a different way. Star Trek is one of those things. If I said, look, I'm going to introduce you to Star Trek, good, there's an episode on the Horror Channel, which is a channel we have in the UK, that shows everything except horror. And then on +1 it does it again. So if I said, oh good, there's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, let's watch this, let's expand your mind. If this episode came on, I honestly wouldn't blame them if they murdered me.
Yeah, it's everything that is wrong with... No, I was going to say with season 1 Star Trek. No, this is everything that's wrong with television. It's how is the actor who is playing this guy like allowed to exist in a movie where the other guest star is the Russian trainer from Rocky 4, right? Okay, but they
only had the other guy for one day.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
This is as well. This episode so far, like of all the episodes we've done, this has got the worst misunderstanding of the Prime Directive that we've ever seen.
Oh, that was my favourite. So this guy Karnak or Karvak or whatever, right? He's down on this planet, and 40 years ago, during the time of the original Star Trek, he reached out. I think he was the leader of a coup or something. But he was
some sort of terrorist leader. He'd taken hostages or something.
And so he was like the Ulster Defence Force, right? He was in the UDF. And he said, he reached out to the Federation and said, look, I need your help because if I become the leader, there will be peace. Which in a sense is, that's an interesting question. If you let a dictator take over, ultimately, is there peace and is that peace worth it? What's that? An interesting idea that Star Trek could handle. Let's not do it in this episode. So he, the Admiral, the old young guy, he then sends him weapons to take out the opposition. But then he decides that he's like, I also decided to give weapons to everyone else because that was my interpretation of the Prime Directive. Because what better way? I mean, I do get it, right? Because obviously, Iraq in 2019 does look exactly like America had just never interfered with it in any way and just been there to observe it, isn't it? No, I just everything about this. I'm fucking angry having to talk about it.
Yeah, it's infuriating.
I think I missed quite a bit of this episode. I had to stop and look at my phone, and that's not from a millennial. I can't pay attention to anything these days. It was, if I have to watch all of this episode, I will tear my eyes out.
Yeah, I watched this one with and Emma was next to me, and she asked me, when the entire description of this guy's interpretation of the Prime Directive is the equivalent of like if Attenborough was filming a documentary, right? Like, because Attenborough, like he never chases like a lion away from a gazelle, even if he really likes the gazelle. But imagine like Attenborough was was filming some chimps, and somehow one of the chimps managed to communicate with David Attenborough that it wanted a gun. So David Attenborough gave all chimps guns. Because that's how you're not it's so that like explanation of the Prime Directive came up, and Emma said to me, "What is the Prime Directive?" And I had to explain it, and she said, "But that's not what that is." And I was like, "No, because the Prime Directive is being referenced in maybe 50% of the episodes that we're watching, and no one has sat down and worked out what it actually fucking is. Like, what is the text of the order that is on the fucking computer system that the fucking Federation are actually... Oh, Jesus
What are the other
Christ.
directives?
Yeah. I've never agreed with a villain in a Star Trek episode more than I do in this one. Because basically what happened is he thought there'd be a short war, and then when the war was over, there would be peace. But what actually happened is there was 40 decades of horrifying future war that destroyed cities, wiped out most of the people, and there's only been 5 years of peace. And the bad guy thinks that Admiral Jameson is to blame for that, and he is correct. Oh...
So
it's.
I mean, it is nice to know that the bridge is wheelchair accessible, I guess.
Yeah, it's got
That's
a beep chair. It's the same chair that the guy's got that you can only beep in the original series.
Would you like to know a fun fact about that chair?
Yes, I would.
That state-of-the-art 24th century wheelchair cost the prop department $10,000 to build. But it didn't even move, which I don't know if you know much about wheelchairs, but the first thing that they should be able to do is move around, because otherwise they're a chair.
Yeah, another thing I would like to bring up about the wheelchair, Mark, and this is something that I've noticed in this episode, is you have to go up 2 steps to get onto the transporter pad, but you can beam from anywhere to anywhere. So why do they beam a bloke in the wheelchair to the top of a small flight of stairs?
Because he's on the bridge, sitting there, and the next thing he's in the ready room. We get a cut and he's in the ready room, and Laura and I reckon that he just beamed from the bridge to the ready room because he's not going to fit it through that door.
In a world where transporters exist, any chair's a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are they? Like, in a world where transporters exist, like because I often, and I mean often, think about how fat I would become if I got the power of teleportation. I would stop using doors. I would get to get up off the couch. I would just teleport from the couch to a standing position.
I think there's a bit. Have you ever seen the movie Jumper?
I think about the movie Jumper more often than the people who made the movie Jumper.
There's a bit where like he's like the main character Hayden Christensen can't use a doorknob properly because Samuel Jackson's like, oh, you don't use doorknobs, and it's like, surely if you're a secret teleporter, there's going to be times where you have to walk through a door.
Now, in Hayden Christensen's defence, which is a sentence I'm finding myself saying more and more these days, American doorknobs are fucking complicated. And I don't understand why. Like, you know the ones that are like the knobs, like the round ones, like the ones that you put in a bag to go around beating people. So
yeah, up the raw.
Yeah, exactly. So the ones like, yeah, you think, oh, you turn it, you open the door, bish bash bosh, job's a good one, right? The problem is they turn 2 directions, which that's your first issue. Then also they've got the little twiddly bit to lock and unlock, and I have never seen one use the same mechanism twice.
Fuck them. That right there is everything that's wrong with America.
Look, I've gone on record before saying this But if America just used door handles instead of knobs, there would be 50% fewer mass shootings.
It all starts with somebody being unable to get a door open. They reach for the gun, which they all have.
Yeah.
Shoot the door open. Then the bullet goes through, hits like somebody else in the leg, and it's like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. Before you know it, 20 dead kids.
People are always giving it, look, you know, we don't have a gun problem, we have a mental health problem, which is patently ridiculous because I've never seen anyone unhappy with a gun in my entire life. Like, they are incredibly fun.
As the Beatles said, happiness is a warm gun.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's just frustration. They've got a knob problem. First of all, they're cutting bits off of their children's knobs, and then they're making them use complicated knobs when that's what it is, right? So Americans, obviously, they're born. The first thing that happens to the male ones is they go in, right, cut off a bit of your knob. What's that for? No reason. There's no. If you're listening to this and you're on the Facebooks, comment below about the health benefits of not circumcision. Or, do you know what? No, fucking don't. So this is the worst episode of this podcast, by the way.
We've gone on to be fair, it's the things I would rather talk about than this episode.
Yeah.
It's because it's not. I've got to stress this. The performance at the centre of this episode is bad, but it's also important to note that literally everything else about this episode is bad. I'll give you an example. Mark, do you think that drawers are a problem that science needs to solve? Right? Right. What makes a drawer better than if you press a button on it and it closes itself? How is that an improvement? Because you're pushing the button on the drawer to push the drawer closed, which is already how drawers work. Right?
Drawers are like if knob technology did have a pinnacle, it is the humble drawer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's simple and easy to use. Maybe in space you need to put a little clicky thing on it so it doesn't flop open. I don't know. But I hate everything about even the techno babble, right, Mark? There is a line in this where Beverly Crusher says that the Admiral's blood has traces of chemical substances, which, if you're not aware, is literally everything.
Did you notice that Karnas is wearing terrible camouflage for his planet?
I put down I was getting strong Bison Trooper energy from Karnas. It's very Street Fighter the movie. This actually feels like it was cobbled together from other less good shows because it's got the Street Fighter the movie, but also when they beam into like the Karnas planet, it looks like they've beamed into Stargate SG-1. It's just
so. This was originally a much more interesting episode.
Oh, I can't imagine it would have been a more boring one.
In the original script, he was in his 60s and he was in decent physical shape.
Okay.
Oh, my screen just went off. Oh, you're back. He was in his 60s and he was in decent physical shape. He demoted himself from Admiral to Commander and then bumped Riker off onto a different ship.
Oh, right.
So it made him... He still done the de-aging treatment, but it only made him younger by 2 decades. But an unforeseen complication by receiving a transfusion of alien blood made it more effective than it should have been. Other elements of this early script included the planet Morden being under threat from a Ferengi invasion, and that's why they had to find peace. And the planet having strategic importance due to the only source of a powerful antiviral drug, right? Which was taken out because it was the same as in Code of Honor. However, at the end of the script, Jameson didn't die, but he just reverted to the age of 14. But the way that it worked originally is that as he de-aged, he would lose all of the memories that he got from the age that he had been.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting.
Including his wife. But then eventually... they managed to stop him when he was 14 years old, and he would become Wesley's best friend.
Yeah. So I like that they took that out Mark, because it was too similar to something that was in a previous episode. But this is the second episode where somebody's found an alien fountain of youth, and nobody thought that was a fucking issue. And it's very specifically a different planet. Not the same one. They could have had it be the same one that's got a fucking fountain of youth that they've mentioned already. But no, it's not that. Oh, to give you an idea, when I say everything about this episode is bad, the episode ends with the Enterprise flying off, and they plot a course for ISIS-free, right? Which does imply that in the future ISIS managed to get at least 3 planets. Good for them, I guess.
Or ISIS's ideals start splitting them such that there are now 3 versions of ISIS with slightly different goals. One of which is a non-profit, and it's just to build more libraries or something. Yeah,
there's also 2 things I want. There's a point in this episode where they get rushed to the sick bay because Jameson's situation has taken a turn for the worse, and I have never been more disappointed in my life that something wasn't a baby. Because he's gotten he previously negotiated a treaty for some people who had a fountain of youth, but they don't share it with outsiders. But because it was him, they gave him 2 doses, one for him, one for his wife. And then when he got this call from this guy who, after 40 years of war, has found out the bloke who started it all is actually still alive somewhere in the universe, so decides to get him. His response to this was, I should give myself both of these and become 40 years younger than my wife. And assumingly, it just made him younger, he's still got the disease, so he's going to go through that again. One big thing I did like in this episode is that there's a bit where they land on the planet, and they get shot at, and Data says to Picard, "They're phasers, sir, set to kill." And Picard's like, "I'm well familiar with the noise, Commander Data." As if Picard's like, I'm a Starfleet captain. I've been shot at a lot. Yeah. Do you reckon that's him bragging about it, or is it just something that's happened to Picard specifically? Just people just don't.
I think that Picard, what he does when he turns on his personal relaxation light, is to study up on the sounds of the various phasers so that he knows what to avoid. See the bit when they're in the underground?
Yeah.
It had a set extension painting. If you've never heard of that, it's literally a painting that makes a set look like it goes on longer. It's like a perspective one. But the particular one that they had was reused from Spaceballs.
Fuck, this episode's so hard.
I can't even if you've gotten 32 minutes into this podcast, Laura, just stop listening. It's unlikely. No, maybe it will. I don't know. I mean, no one knows what the future holds, but I can't even think of any interesting threads to grasp at for bits. There's just nothing.
I've got one.
Right.
I've got one, which is after it's revealed that he's injected himself with both of the injections, he's having an argument with his wife, and his wife uses the phrase, "This is just like you, Mark." Now, what else has this fucker done in his 80 odd years of being in Starfleet that injecting himself with experimental alien rejuvenating potion at twice the registered doses is exactly the sort of thing that his wife goes, typical.
I like to think that even though he is he's stuck in a wheelchair, a super wheelchair that doesn't work, that costs $10,000 to make, and he has. I think she's just like, do you know what this reminds me of? You know how at home, even though you are quite clearly very extremely disabled and you have to sit down all the time. You have some kind of super Parkinson's, and yet you still leave the toilet seat up. and at that point, Mark, I just have to think: is this just passive aggression aimed at me? Is that what you're trying to get across here?
My read on the relationship is that Mark, as the hip hop and happening admiral on the Starfleet advancement career, had a young, beautiful wife and was very much planning on trading her in.
Yeah.
For a younger model as he hit 40. But that's when he got diagnosed with the horrible degenerative disease and was like, oh, fuck, I'm stuck with her now.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do the upgrade. Like Wolf of Wall Street. You're supposed to go from that actress you can't remember to Margot Robbie. And he's been stuck. And that's a
actress you can't remember. Christina Milioti.
Okay.
From How I Met Your Mother and the Star Trek episode of Black Mirror.
Oh, God, it is, isn't it? I haven't watched it in ages. Yeah. She's good. She's a very good actress.
She's good. Aye, she's great. She's good. Aye.
Yeah. But, yeah. The wallpaper's back. The fun wallpaper in, the family quarters bit. Very 80s. That's...
Right. The fact that we've had to fucking resort to talking about the wallpaper... Can we just put a warning at the start of this episode?
Yeah, I might edit in a warning that this episode is. I'd listen to the 10-minute preamble.
Yeah,
and then probably duck out.
I think we should we come up with a you can skip this one. I'm not even going to re-listen to this one.
No,
and I don't blame you, Eddie, and I don't blame myself. I blame this episode.
If you know what, Mark, if TNG hadn't made it past season 1, say it had been cancelled, it was a Firefly situation, it got pulled off the air super early, and this was the final episode, right? It would be one of those curiosities in nerdy fandom where people would be like, oh yeah, no, they tried to reboot Star Trek back in the 80s, but it didn't really work, and people would go back and watch it, and then people would all the way through being like, well, okay, it's not great, but there's some promise here, there's potential, there's directions you could go, and then this episode would be the episode that people would watch and be like, no, that's fair. If there had been no, this is the, I say, if you're listening to this, Clayson Rona, and I know you are, because nobody else is talking about you. You sicken me.
Yeah.
I this isn't going to be a popular thing to say, but sometimes suicide is the answer. Also, how is there no system in place, Mark, for relieving this man of command? At no point can you go, if injecting yourself with experimental alien drugs that make you de-age isn't a reason to demote you from Admiral. In the original version, when he goes back to 14, would he have had the rank of Commander still? No, there has to be a point where you can just step in as a doctor and be like, no, this is, you are... Although, I will say, actually, interesting point, this is our first insane Admiral, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is our first mental evil...
In TNG, anyway.
In TNG, yeah. So... Oh, and also, this episode had the chance to do something interesting as well. Another thing it could have done interesting and it didn't, which is at the end, Jameson's basically said, "Oh yeah, hand me over to Karnas. He can kill me and he will release the hostages. I'm dying anyway," sort of thing. He could have literally quoted "One life for many, a logical exchange" from Wrath of Khan, which I'm assuming in the world of Star Trek is in this universe must be a fairly well-known quote. Because I'm guessing people that's a news
they've added it to Sun Tzu.
Yeah, the events of Wrath of Khan were the actual news, and when word got out, it's oh, what did you hear? What Spock's last words were? They were listening. Oh wow, really deep, and really, really not undermined at all by the fact that Kirk brought him back from the dead. But
yeah, Riker has it on DVD. Did you notice as well when they go to Cardass's office and Picard's like, look, I can show you proof that this is this old guy, and he just shows him a series of stills from earlier in the episode.
What part of the de-aging process, Mark, is the part where your fucking forehead grows twice as high? It's also as well classic Gene Roddenberry, like when we're talking about Angel 1, like Gene Roddenberry has to bring it all back to sex. This guy's first thing after he can, like, I can walk, I can stand, I can thing, you know, I can also fuck.
Yeah. Especially since the wheelchair the thing, it looks like it does cover his knob, so he could be having a little wank in there whenever.
Yeah. Also, oh yeah, Mark, as well, that de-aging thing that he shows him, he's got a recognisable scar from when he met Karnas previously that he could have just shown him straight away. Oh, for fuck's sake. It's so... I've not felt this angry with an episode of any TV show in a long time.
I'm just completely apathetic.
Yeah.
We just need to fucking get to season 3.
Yeah. The word, do you know what really annoyed me about this? On Netflix, when I was looking at this, for some reason, I don't know if there was some error with my Netflix, the thumbnail, when I went to look at this, had Q in it.
Oh,
I think it must have been
bummer.
from a different episode. And I was like, oh, a Q episode, this will be fun. And then no, not a Q episode. It's Admiral Mark Jameson. Oh, one thing I do want to point out, the Admiral is talking about what the terrorists might want, and he says he thinks they're after weapons, and Troy is confused by this. I don't think she knows what a terrorist is.
Also, did you notice that at the beginning of the episode, when he's down at the command level, they kept filming past him to show Troy as if she was going to contribute anything to the story of the episode?
Yeah. Troy contributes so little to the story of this episode that crushes the one who tells Picard that he's hiding something. and even Picard, by the way, with like 15 episodes in, Picard is like, oh, you're stealing it's like you're stealing Councillor Troy's catchphrase, and it's like it shouldn't. If you're 15 episodes in and he's hiding something is already the catchphrase of one of your characters, and it's the character who's supposed to be psychic, you're doing something wrong. I think it's brief. I say you're doing something wrong. Everything you're doing, if you've made this episode of Star Trek, have a word with yourself.
Yeah.
I genuinely think we might have to wrap it up at the fucking 40-minute mark.
Mate, this episode is so fucking boring. Like, the Star Trek episode is so boring. I can't even. It makes my brain sleepy to even have to think about it.
Yeah.
Like there's just nothing. Because I imagine on your red letter medias, on your best of the worst, every now and again they just come up against a video that just has so nothing. There's just nothing to play with. There's no ideas. There's no riffs. There's no fucking threads to pull up. Nothing.
I've got 4 pages of notes, and normally my notes are like first occurrence of this, or like interesting, like plot thread or thing for discussion. Oh, is this the first time this has happened? Is this the first time this has happened? But my notes for this are literally just a series of events that have occurred in the episode.
Do you know what I think you should do, right? I think in 3 weeks' time, when we've got more episodes, I think you should delete this one, so that if anyone ever like comes back to it in 10 years and listens to it and goes, "Why is episode 15 missing?" and we just never speak of it, and that'll be more mystery than anything in this episode. Because as soon as that guy showed up, and I turned to Laura and went, "That's a young guy in old guy makeup." So that's the story.
How did you tell, Mark? How could you spot that so quickly?
It was so. How many old guys do you know?
I've personally, I know my dad, so 1.
Right. Does he just constantly move his mouth around?
He doesn't constantly move his mouth around. He also doesn't go. And the thing is, as well, I thought as he got younger he'd stop overacting, but when he dies, he fucking goes even worse, right? As he's, he sounds like the fucking rebel leader from fucking Total Recall. Do you want to talk about Total Recall? That's a good film.
I haven't. I haven't watched it recently. Total Recall is the for me is the outsider Paul Verhoeven movie. I don't know why. I do like it and I have seen it, but I haven't seen it nearly as often as RoboCop or Starship Troopers. But it's kind of regarded they're regarded as a bit of a trilogy. But for me, I weirdly think of Total Recall more as an Arnie movie than as a Verhoeven movie.
That's fair.
But I don't. I know that it isn't. I know that Verhoeven. There are some big Verhoeven staples and shit in there.
If you do want to do, actually, if you've listened this far, I'm going to reward you. If you want a really fun something that's much more fun than talking about this episode of Star Trek, there's a fantastic YouTuber called Kyle Calgreen who goes under Brows Held High, and he's got a review of Starship Troopers that is 3 episodes. And each episode is over an hour long, and the first is literally just like an hour-long, in-depth like discussion of Heinlein, the author whose work it's based on, like going into his whole life story, who he is. Then the entire second episode is just like an assessment and analysis of the entire filmography of Verhoeven, including the stuff he did in his native Holland and stuff. And then the final episode is finally his actual review of Starship Troopers and its links to American fascism. It's fantastic. If ever you get the urge to watch this episode of Star Trek, watch 3 hours of somebody talking about Starship Troopers instead. Or hit yourself with a brick, it'll be better.
Yeah. This is fucking depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phasers have a cutting mode. That's something I've got written down. You can use them to cut through stuff. That's...
Yep.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
How much is a fucking admiral? How mental do you have to be before? Because it's not just that guy should have been removed from command, right?
Yeah.
By the time they've been down to the planet, he should be in the fucking brig.
Is there... Yeah, exactly. Is there like when you take the... Is the admiral exam in Starfleet just how mental are you? Because, do you think when Janeway got back to Earth and he went, do you want to go for the Admiral exam? She says, yeah, I'll go for the Admiral exam. And he said, right, this is the one question. What are your plans as an Admiral? And she says, I'm going to steal a time ship in order to go back in time and help Voyager get home 7 years early.
And then the follow-up question is, is that you answering that? Or is that the parasitic alien that's taken control of your body? Yeah, don't ever watch this. This is bad. I've no idea what the next episode is. I don't recognise the title, but it cannot possibly be worse.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. Right.
Oh, by the way, they've got no pain relief. That's something else as well I've spotted. They can't relieve his pain. Apparently, with all their future technology, they don't carry fucking morphine. My dog in the other room right now is on better pain medication than they give this guy. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that was a moment where the Gates McFadden, the actress, was just like, I don't want to act giving this man painkillers. Patrick Stewart should have fucking quit.
Yeah.
Like being put opposite this who's the cast? Whoever fucking cast this guy deserves a fucking slap. I genuinely despise Clayton Rona, and he's in an episode of Ozark, and people are trying to get me to watch that, and I'm not going to now. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed this. Bye.
Bye.